Hello, hello, good morning.
Hey, hello. How are you?
Very good. How are you, Hugh?
I'm okay, thank you. I have to apologize in advance because there could well be loads of crazy background noise because we're having some renovation work done on my house.
Okay, no worries. Classic. That's not a problem. And could you guys, well, folks, shall I say, being more politically correct, can you hear us okay? All good? Yep, perfect. So let's start. Thank you so much for coming to my live session today. Very much appreciated.
You're welcome.
And interestingly enough, when I announced that, lots of people told me that they saw you in Crimea, in Yaroslavl, in all around Russia. So you seem to travel loads around the place. So
I have traveled a fair bit.
good. And yep, so definitely people are looking forward to our conversation today. And just uh, let's start with a round of introductions, probably a little bit more about me and why did I want to get you involved today. So I'm Vera, and I have two kids, 3 and 5, Sasha and George, and my husband is British, so we're kind of living in the bilingual experiment at the moment. So I'm trying to speak only Russian to them and involve them with all the Russian culture, and then I think we're doing quite well. And they're also going to English school, to nursery now, so they're proficient English speakers at the age of 3 and 5, of course, you can imagine. And my audience has lots of questions for me about how to teach kids and their kids any age from 0 to probably 15, how to get them into English from early childhood.
Hmm.
Um, so maybe first of all we'll start with introducing you. So could you tell us a little bit more about yourself
Yeah,
and your approach?
sure. So, hello, my name's Hugh Dellar. I'm based in North London. I'm a teacher and a teacher trainer and a course book writer. I've been teaching since 1993 and
Wow.
writing since about 2000. So I've been involved in the innovation series and more recently the outcomes series. I've also co-authored a methodology book called Teaching Lexically with Andrew Walkley, who I've done all my work with. And we've been involved in some Pearson projects with Roadmap and high school book as well called Perspectives, all for National Geographic Learning. I also run an online language school and training company called Lexical Lab. And under normal circumstances, we also run a London-based summer school. But obviously, this year and last, we've had to cancel because of the ongoing COVID restrictions. Um, yeah, I mean, apart from that, I'm also a parent. I've got two kids aged 12 and 9, a girl and a boy. And my wife's Indonesian, and we're a classic example of how not to bring your children up
Oh.
bilingually. It's not what's happened in our case for various reasons. Um, yeah, and I mean, I could go on, but it depends how much you want me to waffle on about myself.
No, no, it's all very interesting and very much. So I came across your teaching when I started to have lots of demand on Zoom classes when COVID started, and I was like,
Oh,
where do I go and where do I go and learn this lexical approach? Because what I feel like children don't learn like this is an apple, this is a red apple. They want
yeah,
to, they can take in much more than just very rigid language. And
yeah,
George comes to me and says, "Have you seen this? Oh, have you seen that?" And it's very much a real life language. And I came across your books and was very grateful to get lots of material and inspiration. So, um, the first question for you: what do you think? What is a good age for kids to start learning English, and the progress when teaching different age groups?
so it's a difficult question in a way because I think obviously the context of your children is very different in that they're growing up with one parent who speaks one language all the time to them and the rest of the time they're in an English speaking environment. I think I kind of have two feelings. I think one is obviously it's good to start early with kids And if they're getting input from an early age, it's obviously a useful thing. And lots of countries where kids grow up speaking quite amazing levels of English, such as Scandinavia, for example, one of the reasons why that happens is because they have undubbed TV. So they're watching English cartoons and kids programs from an early age, often with Swedish subtitles and so on. So I think getting input in early is useful. At the same time, I think for a lot of people, that's not necessarily going to be an option. And I think you have to be realistic about what's achievable if your kids are studying, say, 2 hours a week at primary school or whatever. I mean, my kids here have been doing Spanish for like 3 years. And
Mhm.
you wouldn't know it from talking to them. I mean, like nothing, basically, almost nothing. A few random sentences here and there, because it just feels like a remote, removed experience from them. And I think the teaching's not particularly great that they're getting. I guess my other worry is, while I think it is good for parents to try to get their kids exposed to English from an early age, I do worry that we also have a lot of parents out there who are kind of, I don't know, tiger parents who hot house their kids,
Yeah.
who pressurize their 3, 4, 5, 6 year olds and get frustrated because they don't have bilingual children by the time they're 8. And these are people living outside of English speaking environments. And so I think, you know, it's good to get some early exposure in, and it's good to start early, but be realistic and make sure your kids also have a childhood, would be
Oh,
my about all of that.
no, absolutely. So it's all about the balance.
Yeah,
Um, because this is this growing trend in Russia of so-called Anglo mamas. I don't know if you've heard of
yeah, of
it.
course.
Probably, yeah. So, and I've seen some amazing results when a mum being a linguist or English teacher, or not necessarily an English teacher, but a very inspired and a motivated person, she talks to her boy and a girl from, I don't know, 10 months,
Yeah,
only English, and they practice this artificial way of bringing a bilingual child. But I have a group of kids at the age of 5 and 7, and we can talk to, we discuss books the same as I can see my daughter Sasha does in reception, and it's a very high level. So it's kind of, you, there are some successful stories, but also there is a pressure of, you know, how much time can you dedicate to that? And that's my question again, because a few people ask me, how much time do you think is a good idea to dedicate to the language? Like 20 minutes a day? Um, all the time, or speak to them like constantly in English, or is there just
so
interesting to see your views?
this is kind of where we went wrong ourselves, I think, with Indonesian. I mean, our situation is sort of slightly more complicated because my wife left Indonesia when she was 18, and her whole adult life has been in and through English. She lived in the States for a bit, and then she's lived here. And when we had our daughter, my wife had already been outside of Indonesia longer than she'd been in Indonesia, and she didn't know how people spoke to kids in Indonesian because she hadn't had that experience of like talking to her friends' children in Indonesian or anything like that. And I think initially we kind of tried to do like bath times would be Indonesian. I also speak Indonesian, and so we'd kind of talk to my daughter in Indonesian. Um, what then happened was she started out speaking Indonesian. As soon as she went to a childminder when she was 2 or 3, she worked out very quickly that the childminder didn't understand Indonesian. The childminder was sort of asking, your daughter keeps asking for susu. What's she talking about? Like, yeah, she wants some milk. Oh, why did she say that? It's like, oh. So my daughter was sort of like, what? So no one I'm going to meet out there speaks Indonesian? It's like, yeah, sorry, kid. That's how it's going to work. I think I later came to realize, having talked to other people and read more about it. I mean, a lot of my friends here in London are in binational relationships and, you know, often bilingual relationships. And the people who've successfully brought up their kids bilingually do it because one parent minimum all the time speaks that language. Okay. So, I mean, you know, we've got friends who are like, it'll be like a Somali dad and a Welsh mum, for example. and the Somali dad speaks Somali all the time to the kid. And through that process, the kid ends up basically being bilingual by the age of sort of 8 or 9. But it does require, I think, one parent all the time. My co-author, Andrew, his ex-wife was Spanish, and his two kids are both bilingual. And his ex-wife, Maku, spoke Spanish all the time with the kids. And Andrew also spoke Spanish a fair bit of the time. On top of that, I think they also had Spanish-speaking kids at their school, in the way that there are also often Somali-speaking kids at schools, but never Indonesian-speaking kids at the school. So kind of depends also on what other contact outside of the parental input I think the kids get. But I think if you're serious about it, one parent, one language all the time. And that can be weird because, you know, when you're out and about, I know from when we're in Indonesia, my wife gets wound up when she sees Indonesian families in like the malls in Jakarta or whatever, and they're speaking English to their kids, because there is often this kind of like, look at us, we're so middle class, we speak a foreign language all the time, you peasants. And that can also sort of be problematic and a bit weird. And I think, you know, there may be times when, if you're doing it in Russia, that you want to switch back into speaking Russian to your kid, just because it can be sort of socially awkward sometimes. But I think, yeah, one language as much of the time as you feel you can from at least one parent.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And that's what I hear with my children. They're and we do go to Russia, to the dacha, and try to expose them and have play dates. So it's sort of trying as much as we can expose them to both languages.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about kids, they say the age of 4 or 5 or 6, and their mum suddenly thinks, okay, now, time to learn English. And how quickly can they progress at that age? Or when is a good time to start when you haven't started bilingual experiment at the age of 10 months? Then when is a good time to start, and what pace do you think we should expect?
4 or 5 is fine. As I said before, it's just then having realistic expectations. So if your kids are 4 or 5 and they're doing 2 or 3 hours of English a week, and they're learning some stories and some songs and, you know, a bit of TPR and all that kind of fun stuff that you can do with kids that age, I think you will see results. But I think you have to be very realistic about what kind of results are achievable, even for kids. And I think, you know, kids, there's more plasticity in the brain, that they're more able to absorb more information, maybe, than when you get to my age. But I think it's still being realistic about what's achievable. I mean, those kids who are in 2 or 3 hours a week from the age of 4 are possibly never going to become bilingual. You know, that's not going to happen. What you might get is kids who, by the time they're 12, 13, 14, are sort of good, strong, functioning intermediate, upper intermediate users, and they're quite confident. But I don't think you can look at that and think bilingual by the age of 11. It's just not going to happen. And but you get out what you put in. You know, I think in with all things in life, you get out what you put in.
Absolutely. And there is a tendency in Russian schools or Russian-speaking schools when kids tend to read and write a lot. And when you come out of school, you're like, English is, you know, we can write and read, we can talk about different topics like ecology or civil rights, but the everyday real
conversation.
Conversation. So that's the problem. And you're stuck, and you kind of, and it's quite a big problem. So probably the other thing I wanted to ask you is how to expose yourself, if you want to learn this conversational language, and your kids to a real life language, and what would you recommend if you focusing on that type of
so if you're looking yourself to learn real spoken language, obviously as an online language school owner, I'd recommend you check out the courses at Lexical Lab. Sorry, cheap commercial plug.
No,
but
absolutely.
It's interesting. I mean, a lot of the people we do work with are actually high level English teachers themselves. So we have teachers from like Ukraine, Poland, Belarus, Czech Republic, Spain, Brazil, and most of them are already kind of CAE, CPE level, sometimes beyond. And they're people who are still looking to push on with their English, and in particular, just to kind of develop the naturalness and the normalness of their everyday spoken language. I think for kids, it's two things, because I think a lot of the time, sadly, unless they've got a particularly good teacher, or maybe they're having private lessons outside of the state system, they're not necessarily going to get much normal spoken language. You know, a lot of the time kids will be dumped on from quite a young age with bizarre grammar. You know, my friend has 2 pens. I don't have 2 pens. I have 3 pens, and you have to produce all nonsense. If you're lucky, I mean, I've got a friend who lives in Saratov, who works for a school there called Nova Baby, and they work with very young kids. And I've seen the classes, and they're just brilliant what they do with them. They do a lot of kind of what parents do with kids normally in their own first language, which is playing with them, talking to them, telling stories, making things, drawing things, not expecting accurate production, reformulating things. So, you know, when the kids kind of lying there on the floor, flapping their imaginary wings, saying, "I butterfly, I wings," the teachers are kind of going, "Oh, no, you're a butterfly. You've got wings. You've got beautiful wings." And then the kids are kind of going, "Got beautiful wings." And, you know, that's exactly how parentese works when you're talking to your kids as they're growing up speaking their own L1, where the kids are kind of going, "Want milk?" And the parents go, "Oh, do you want some milk? I'll get you some milk." And slowly over time, that starts to stick. So I think it can come from parents in normal everyday situations. It can come from good teachers. Outside of that, I think a lot of it can then come from the internet and from just watching cartoons and, you know, kids' TV programs and that kind of thing. And if you are online, as almost everybody is these days, and presumably everybody watching this will be, you know, find some English language things that are age appropriate for your kids that they like. And, you know, whatever that is, whether that's Peppa Pig or, you know,
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
Simpsons or whatever it is, find something age appropriate for them and let them just sit and absorb that in English. If you want to, with L1 subtitles. And that way you get a lot more exposure to spoken language. I mean, I know for myself, when I was first learning Indonesian, I hated all of the formal books that were available to study the language, because it was just full of nonsense. It was full of like grammar driven nonsense. And actually what I learned a lot from was buying bilingual Disney comics. Okay. And I'd read these kind of dialogues between like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, but they were basically just everyday spoken Indonesian. And it would have like the English translations, and it would be things like, "No way, you're out of your mind." You'd see the Indonesian translation and you're like, that's more useful than what I'm learning in my grammar book. And so I think anything like that that you can expose your kids to will help them get a sense of, you know, more natural, more normal speech.
We've got Tintin books here, and I
There
enjoy
you
reading
go.
them because that's all the comics is. That's a good idea. Could I jump in with, could we ask you for a couple of more recommendations of cartoons? Because we all know Peppa Pig, but maybe you've got your own favorites. Just a couple of more. So I'm sure,
Oh
you know,
God.
I know your kids are
I
a
mean,
little bit older, but
they are.
just,
I mean, the thing that we've all come to love is The Simpsons. And I think The Simpsons is genius on so many levels, because kids can watch it and adults can watch it on a completely different level. And it's one of those really rare cartoons that has these kind of different levels of stuff going on. Whereas an adult, you're going, wow, they're referencing Clockwork Orange, you know. The meta text in The Simpsons is incredible. And the kids are just kind of looking at it going, oh, he's having his eyes peeled open. I love The Simpsons. My kids also went through a big phase where they were watching Sponge Pants Square Pants Sponge. What's it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Bob Square Sponge Pants. That one, which
good
was
stuff.
very entertaining. Oh, there's been hundreds. There's been too many to remember for me.
No,
And the stage where it was just like, yeah, you can watch 20 minutes of cartoons. It's Saturday, but then turn it off.
that's I'm sure that's good enough, because you wouldn't think about Simpson as a enjoyable thing for parents and children. So that's definitely a good
What
tip. I'm going to watch
greatest
Simpsons again.
ever made?
And if we're talking about adults, and lots of people are asking me what's important to speak language freely and confidently, and is it intonation or accent, diverse vocabulary, freedom of using language and getting it out of your brain and head when you need this particular, not just word, but you want to speak beautifully. People say, I want to speak like Hugh Dellar with all this beautiful phrases and words and witty little how do I say, phrases. So yeah, how to get to that level in a
So
nutshell, of course.
I think the first thing is it's almost nothing to do with accent and intonation. Okay. And I think a lot of Russians that I know worry way too much about this. And almost every time I do a talk in Russian, someone will come up to me afterwards and say, I heard you say often. Is it often or often? It's like, no one cares. It doesn't matter. So it's like, do you really think there's only one way that words are pronounced in English? Like, look at where English is spoken, okay? I mean, my mum is from the north of England, so my mum will say grass and castle and raspberries. For me, I grew up in the south, I'll say grass or raspberries. And within that there's endless other variations. So the first thing I would say is, it's nothing to do with your accent, and it's very little to do with intonation. And I think that weird fetishization of received pronunciation actually both kind of harms people, because people end up with this weird inferiority complex because they're judging themselves against a sort of almost unattainable standard. And I think it also, for me, anyone who's listening to your accent more than your English is basically a bit of an asshole. And growing up in London, it's like you hear everything all the time. So, I mean, when I was growing up, I had friends from Irish backgrounds, Jamaican backgrounds, Turkish backgrounds, Nigerian backgrounds. And you grow up hearing all these different kinds of accents, as well as people from Liverpool or from Glasgow or whatever. And we all sound different, and we all talk to each other. And what I'm listening for is the human behind the accent. In terms of how you get there, I think the first thing to say is, up until about pre-intermediate, it's learning grammar as lexis in a way. And what I mean by that is, it's not learning grammar for grammar's sake. It's not being forced to produce mad sentences like, we are not Uruguayan, we are Brazilian. Pele is not Argentinian, he is Brazilian. It's not being forced to do all this nonsense. It's basically learning grammar that you need to have conversations with the vocabulary it goes with. So it means just things like, what are you doing tonight? What are you doing this weekend? What are you doing later? I'm not sure. I might go and see a movie. I'm not sure. I might just stay at home. Oh, I'm going to meet friends. I'm going to the cinema. I'm going to a party. And it means kind of learning those things together at a low level. Once you've got a basic grasp of ways of talking about the past, the present, the future, from the past to now, your basics like present simple, present perfect, simple, a few present perfect, continuous questions, going to, well, once you've seen all that, what then gets you from, say, early intermediate to advanced is basically all vocabulary. And when you look at the requirements for the Cambridge exams, I mean, to pass FCE, which is, let's say end of upper intermediate, you can realistically expect to pass FCE. You need to have a working knowledge of around 3,000 words. And that means knowing multiple meanings of those words, knowing how those words collocate, knowing phrases using those words, and knowing the contexts in which those words operate and how they interact with grammar. To then get from there to advanced, say Cambridge advanced, you need to double the amount of vocabulary. So to go one level up from FCE to CAE, you're basically learning as much again as you've learned already. So Cambridge say you need around 6,000 words working vocabulary. To get to proficiency, good luck, you need to double that again, and you're looking at a working vocabulary of around 12 to 13,000 words. Obviously, a lot of that will be receptive, passive knowledge, but it'll be there in the back of your head. Okay. And so I think what it really means is recognizing and prioritizing post intermediate level, post pre intermediate level, just the importance of collocations and phrases and chunks and expressions. You may have seen, I have a YouTube channel, Lexical Lab YouTube channel, and we do these videos 3 times a week called 1 Minute English. And it's basically just looking at all this kind of stuff. So I also put the videos on Instagram, but I'm just looking now at what I've done. I often do things that have come up in class, okay? So it will be things that my students have tried to say that I've helped them say. So in the last few days, we've done things like, it gets a bad rap, he got done for a crime. Make of that what you will. The mother of all thunderstorms, by far and away, reach the end of your tether, come on in leaps and bounds, no rest for the wicked, you know, all things considered. And it's just that there's an endless sea of all of that kind of language. And I think once you hit the intermediate level, that's what you need to be prioritizing. You know,
Yeah.
It's not grammar, it's not accent, it's not intonation, it's just acquiring a lot of that language. And I mean, many of the most intelligent, witty, remarkable speakers of English I've ever met spoke quite heavily accented English. My football team here in North London, Arsenal, for years we had a French manager, Arsène Wenger. And Arsène Wenger, even after 20 years of living in London, was immediately recognizable as a Frenchman. But he was one of the funniest, smartest, most intelligent, you know, wonderful human beings I've ever had the pleasure to listen to speaking. And that was because of his brain and his grasp of the language. And, you know, right up until he left London, he maintained this very strong French identity as a French accented speaker of English. So I would say, you know, if you're going to worry about the right things.
Oh, that's good advice. Thank you so much. And I love your videos, and it's just such a joy. I actually show it to my husband, who is from Stoke Newington, not far from you, North London.
Oh, really? Up to Stoke
Yeah.
Oh, other side of the Seven Sisters Road.
Oh, yeah. He's just near Clissold Park.
No, it's like 5 minutes up the road from where I am.
Oh, amazing. Yeah,
I'm
that's
just over the other side of Green Lanes.
nice. So yeah, we do come there well, we were coming before the COVID, and now we've recently came there again, and it's brilliant to see. Yeah, oh, it's such a gem. Nobody knows about Stoke Newington in London if you're not a Londoner.
No, and you've got that whole amazing area behind with like the reservoir and all of that.
Yeah,
Woodbury Downs and all of that. It's lovely.
and it's changed quite a bit because I lived there since 70s. So
Yeah.
that's quite all the
Yeah.
nice coffee shops and art shops. So it's
it's all poshed up these days.
yeah, no, we love that area. So what I was saying, that I do show it to my husband sometimes, and it's an interesting way of learning the language, and just even for a native speaker, the same as Russian or any language, is constantly evolving, and lots of new words appear, lots of new. When I come to Russia, I probably wouldn't understand some of the words teenagers would say because they have their own.
But my wife's always saying this. My wife's on WhatsApp group with friends she grew up with, and she's always kind of saying like, God, Jakarta, like the language changes so quickly, and this kind of or Indonesians do a lot of hybrid words, or portmanteau words, where you glue the beginning and end together, and it's always developing and changing. And if you're not in it, you kind of miss out on a lot of it.
Yeah, so enjoying the language at some point, that's what you're doing it out of joy, not because you have to learn and have to achieve a certain level. You love it, and it's nice to exchange all this. I always say to my students, and I have students at the age of 4 or 5, I'm passing you a secret knowledge. I'll teach you how to say buckwheat, which is grechka in Russian, because probably your parents wouldn't know, but you eat it every day, so you need to know the word buckwheat and that kind of thing. So maybe to wrap up our exciting conversation, one more question about teaching specifically Russian-speaking students, as you've been to Crimea and Yaroslav and all around. So can you share your experience, from your experience, what sort of specific things you as a Russian English speaker should look for when you speaking? I know we have troubles with V and A, and this is just
Hmm.
a big thing, but maybe there are other things maybe you just can think about.
So I think actually, I mean, one of the most interesting issues for me working with Russians is I think generally a lot of Russian speakers of English are very motivated and not afraid of the hard work that's involved in learning a language. Um, I think what I have noticed is two or three things. There's a definite obsession with the idea of one correct answer, one way of doing things, um, and a sort of uh, not a fear, but a reluctance to embrace kind of diversity and ambiguity a lot of the time. And I know a lot of Russian teachers will write to me saying, like, where are the answers to this exercise? It's like, there aren't any answers. It's open-ended. It depends on what the students think. Poof! They're like, I don't like this exercise. So I like things to have fixed answers. There's definitely this. I think also Russian students are often taught in a way which encourages a very, very analytical approach, and that sometimes that can be wonderful, but often it hits a wall because they're analyzing things and looking for logic and overthinking things. And in the end, you just have to go, look, I understand why you think this, but it doesn't work like that. Okay. The language isn't always logical. It doesn't always make sense. I can't always explain it to you by giving you a rule. This is just how it is, and this is how it works. And I think for a lot of Russian learners, there's a kind of like, there must be a logical explanation. And it's like, language isn't logic. Like, you want logic, go and study pure mathematics or something. It's just, you're looking in the wrong place. I think the other thing that sometimes happens, I mean, there's the inevitable kind of articles issue. And I just tell most Russian students, like, just almost forget about articles, because you're probably always going to make mistakes with them. It's like, and it doesn't matter that the reason those mistakes stay in your language is because basically there's no communicative need for you to notice and correct them in the way that there is if you kind of.
Oh, I think we've just. Oh.
I think, just accept some things you're always probably going to make little mistakes with, and it's not the end of the world. And accepting imperfectibility, I think, is probably a healthy thing to embrace. And yeah, then after that, there are certain problem sounds. But I mean, I've never met a Russian, even the Russians who have very strong Russian accent like this, is not a problem because it is usually intelligible. I've never had a Russian speaker who I couldn't understand, or that I don't think would generally be widely understood. I've met lots of Russians who have very strong Russian accents, and what? Yeah, the only other problems I would say is sometimes there are stress issues with words. There are some words which come from Russian over into English where the stress is different. The stress is probably more important to the comprehension than the actual vowel sounds you're producing, or even some of the consonant sounds you're producing. So, worry about word stress more than about other bits and pieces. So yeah, but yeah, my general advice to Russian students would just be, just chill a bit, relax.
Love it.
Enjoy it. Just chill. Just communicate more. Relax.
Yeah. Well,
No one's judging you. Well, no one here is judging you. Okay. I know you've been judged all through your high school, but outside of high school, chill. Enjoy the ride.
Brilliant. That's definitely, we need to chill and relax. It's fine. It's not like someone is going to, look at you and check all the imperfections, but it's probably 70 years of history before that, of a very
Yeah.
strong
All these
system.
things emerge from a context, yeah.
Yeah, so uh, thank you so much. And I'm sure we've got lots of questions now and comments I can hear, but I can see now, but it's probably we won't be able to answer everyone now because it's quite specific questions about classroom management and depends on the students, I would imagine. So if you want to go and get your answers, you can find Hugh and his online school now. And I'm hoping to actually would like to come myself to your school in person one day, hopefully when it's open,
Next
because
year.
yeah,
Next year.
next year I'm definitely in because it's a privilege now of having real life classroom teaching.
I
So
know. No.
definitely I'm coming to get my extra 12,000 words to in
You're almost there, I can hear.
well, try my best, but it's always, people always ask you to, where are you from? So that's, but I'm not trying to sound, Russian or not Russian. We're just enjoying the language, enjoying the ride. So I'll think we'll leave on that note. And again, lots of people
And
saying thank
uh,
you. And
thank you very much for inviting me. And everyone watching, please do follow me on Instagram and drop me a message or something if you've got anything else you wanted to ask. Okay, I'm always around and easy to reach. So
watch
thank
that
you all very
videos.
much.
They're wonderful videos on Instagram and YouTube. They're so much fun. First things first, and hopefully we'll see each other sometime in St. Newton. You never know.
Yeah. There'll be a lot.
And
Okay.
have a good day. Thank you so
Thank you
much for
very much,
coming.
Sarah. Take care. Paka.
Thank you all. Baka baka. Thank you.